Scanner Technician Flux-12 was having the kind of shift that made him seriously question his career choices. It wasn't the usual diplomatic headaches that bothered him, though those were plentiful enough. It wasn't even the constant stream of irritable delegates from 17 different species, each one convinced that their particular requirements for atmospheric composition, gravitational orientation, and dietary restrictions were somehow more important than everyone else's. No. What was really ruining Flux-12's day was the human. She stood in the middle of his scanning bay, arms spread wide, wearing the most innocent expression he had ever seen on any sentient being. The security scanners had run their full diagnostic sequence 3 times, each pass more thorough than the last, and every single reading came back identical, completely clean. No weapons, no contraband, no prohibited technology of any kind. So why did every alarm in Flux-12's head go off every time he looked at her? "Is there a problem with your equipment?" the human asked, tilting her head with what appeared to be genuine concern. "I don't mind waiting while you recalibrate. The equipment is functioning perfectly," Flux-12 replied, his voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had given up trying to understand the universe. "Technical Specialist Iris Stone, according to our records, you're listed as a cultural exchange coordinator from Earth." "That's correct. Your job involves facilitating peaceful interactions between different species. Among other things, yes. And yet," Flux-12 continued, consulting his scanner readings for the 4th time, "you're registering energy signatures that I've only seen from individuals with extensive combat experience." Iris raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure what you mean by that. The micro-fractures in your bone structure, the way your muscles show stress patterns from repetitive motion that isn't consistent with desk work, the fact that your reaction times are approximately 40% faster than baseline human norms." Flux-12 looked up from his instruments. "Miss Stone, either you're the galaxy's most physically active cultural coordinator, or there's something you're not telling me." "Well," Iris said with a cheerful smile, "I do try to stay in shape." "By doing what, exactly?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Jogging, swimming, martial arts, weapons training, tactical planning, advanced combat techniques." She paused, apparently realizing what she had just said. "I mean, yoga? Lots of yoga." Flux-12 stared at her for a long moment. "Did you just list weapons training and tactical planning as part of your fitness routine?" "Did I? I must have misspoken. Sometimes I get my hobbies confused with my professional development requirements." "Professional development requirements, or cultural exchange work, of course. You never know what kind of cultural practices you might encounter in the field." "Cultural practices that require weapons training? You'd be surprised how many species consider ritual combat to be an important part of diplomatic protocol." Flux-12 felt his breathing apparatus wheeze with what might have been laughter or despair. "Miss Stone, are you telling me that your job as a cultural coordinator involves fighting people?" "Oh goodness, no," Iris replied with obvious shock. "My job involves understanding people. The fighting is just supplementary research." "Supplementary research?" "Exactly. You can't really understand a warrior culture without experiencing their approach to conflict resolution firsthand." "And how often does this supplementary research result in actual combat?" "Well, that depends on how enthusiastic the subjects are about sharing their cultural knowledge." Flux-12 looked down at his scanner readings again, noting the dozens of indicators that suggested this unassuming human had been in more fights than most professional soldiers. "Miss Stone, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. How many times have you been injured in the line of duty?" "Injured is such a strong word. How many times have you been hurt while doing your job?" "Define hurt." "Physical damage requiring medical attention." Iris considered this question with the seriousness of someone performing complex mathematical calculations. "This year or total career?" "Total career, including minor incidents." "All incidents." "Well, if we're counting everything," she began, counting on her fingers, paused, started over, then gave up. "Let's just say I've learned a lot about xenobiology through direct observation." "Direct observation of what?" "How different species react when you accidentally challenge them to ritual combat." "You accidentally challenge people to fights?" "Cultural misunderstandings happen," Iris said with a shrug. "Sometimes a gesture of respect in one culture is considered a declaration of war in another. It's all about context. Flux-12 was beginning to understand why human diplomatic personnel had such high insurance premiums. And how do these cultural misunderstandings typically resolve themselves? Through mutual education and increased understanding between species. After you fight them. After we engage in traditional conflict resolution methods specific to their cultural framework. Fighting, enhanced interpersonal communication. You're describing combat as enhanced interpersonal communication? Have you ever tried to negotiate with a Vorthak warrior while they're trying to remove your head with a ceremonial battle axe? It's very clarifying for both parties involved. At this point, Flux-12 decided that he either needed a vacation or a career change. Possibly both. Miss Stone, I'm going to need you to be completely honest with me. What exactly is your background? I have a degree in Xenocultural Studies from the University of New Geneva, with a minor in Comparative Religious Practices and Conflict Resolution. That sounds very academic. It was. Very theoretical. Lots of reading about different species and their customs. And the practical experience? Well, you can't really understand a culture until you've lived it, can you? So you decided to live the warrior cultures. I decided to gain a comprehensive understanding of how different species approach interpersonal dynamics. By getting into fights with them, by participating in their traditional social interaction methods. Flux-12 looked at the human standing in his scanning bay, noting the way she held herself with the casual balance of someone who could explode into motion at any moment. The eyes that constantly cataloged potential threats and escape routes, and the smile that managed to be both friendly and, somehow, predatory. Miss Stone, he said finally, our security protocols are very clear. No weapons are allowed in the conference facility. I understand completely. No combat equipment of any kind. Of course, no items that could be used to cause harm to other delegates. Absolutely. So, I want to be very clear about this. You are not carrying anything that could be considered a weapon? Not a thing, Iris replied, cheerfully. Good. Then you're cleared for conference access. Flux-12 paused, then added, though I should mention that the Vorthak delegation specifically requested that Earth's representative be someone with combat experience. Really? How interesting. They seem to believe that humans who haven't proven themselves in battle are unworthy of serious negotiation. Well, they're not wrong about the importance of credibility in diplomatic relationships, and they've apparently heard rumors about human cultural coordinators who specialize in hands-on research. Iris's smile widened. Rumors? Something about a human who once resolved a territorial dispute on Rigel 7 by challenging the entire planetary council to single combat and winning. That sounds like an exaggeration. And another story about a cultural exchange specialist who ended a trade war by arm wrestling the Centaurian Prime Minister. People do love their stories. There's also something about a human who prevented an interplanetary conflict by outdrinking a Calreth war chief and then carrying him home when he passed out. That one might be true, Iris admitted. But it was cultural research. The Calreth consider alcohol tolerance to be a measure of spiritual strength. Flux-12 realized that he was dealing with something far beyond his pay grade. Miss Stone, the Vorthak delegates are waiting in Conference Room 7. They've been asking specifically when Earth's representative would arrive. How exciting. I love meeting new species. They've also been making comments about testing the human's worthiness through traditional Vorthak challenges. What kind of challenges? The kind that typically involve significant physical violence and a high probability of serious injury. Iris's eyes lit up with what could only be described as professional interest. How fascinating. I've read about Vorthak challenge protocols, but I've never had the opportunity to observe them firsthand. Observe them or participate in them, depending on what's required for proper cultural understanding. Flux-12 watched the human walk toward Conference Room 7 with the stride of someone heading to a pleasant social gathering rather than a potential death match. As she disappeared around the corner, he activated his communication unit. Scanner Technician Flux-12 to Medical Bay. Go ahead, Flux-12. You might want to prep the trauma unit. We're about to have some cultural exchange activities in Conference Room 7. What kind of cultural exchange? The kind where the human tries to understand Vorthak tradition through direct participation in ritual combat? Is the human trained for that kind of thing? Flux-12 looked at his scanner readings one more time, taking in all the indicators that suggested this cheerful cultural coordinator had more combat experience than most military units. Medical Bay, he said slowly. I have a feeling that the Vorthak are about to get a very comprehensive education in human culture. Meanwhile, in conference room 7, 6 Vorthak warriors had arranged themselves around the central table in what was clearly a battle formation. Each warrior stood over 7 feet tall, with natural armor plating and multiple appendages that could function as either tools or weapons. They had been waiting for 20 minutes, and their patience was beginning to wear thin. "Where is this human representative?" growled Challenge Master Korth 9, his voice carrying the rumble of distant thunder. "Do they think to insult us with delays?" "Perhaps," suggested War Speaker Vorth 3. "The humans have realized the futility of sending an untested weakling to negotiate with true warriors. Or," added Battle Sage Gorth 12, "they hope to avoid the traditional challenges by claiming diplomatic immunity." The room fell silent as the door opened, and Iris Stone entered with the casual confidence of someone arriving at a friendly dinner party. She looked around the room, taking in the imposing Vorthak formation, the aggressive postures, and the barely controlled hostility. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," she said cheerfully. "I'm Iris Stone, Earth's Cultural Exchange Coordinator. I understand you've been waiting to meet me?" Challenge Master Korth 9 studied the small human female, noting her relaxed posture and apparent lack of weapons or armor. "You are not what we expected. I get that a lot. The Vorthak Empire deals only with proven warriors. We do not negotiate with untested civilians." "Well," Iris replied, beginning to roll up her sleeves and revealing an intricate pattern of scars that told the story of dozens of previous encounters. "That's convenient, because I'm not really a civilian." The Vorthak warriors exchanged glances, suddenly noticing details they had missed in their initial assessment. The way the human moved, the scars that marked her exposed skin, and the smile that suggested she was looking forward to whatever came next. "Perhaps," Challenge Master Korth 9 said slowly, "we should discuss the terms of traditional challenge." "I thought you'd never ask," Iris replied, and Flux-12, monitoring the conversation through security feeds, began updating his incident report forms. As the Vorthak warriors began explaining their challenge protocols, Flux-12 received an urgent communication from his supervisor, Senior Technician WEX-7. "Flux-12. We're receiving some unusual inquiries about the human delegate. Apparently, several species have been asking specific questions about Earth's representative." "What kind of questions?" Flux-12 asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "The Regelian trade delegation wants to know if it's true that humans settle disputes through physical combat. The Centaurian ambassadors are asking about human pain tolerance and recovery rates. And the Calrith representative specifically requested verification of rumors about a human who once defeated 3 of their champions in consecutive honor duels." Flux-12 looked at his scanner readings again, noting the increasing number of anomalies that suggested extensive combat experience. "Sir, I think those rumors might not be rumors." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the human cultural coordinator I just cleared for conference access has enough scar tissue to suggest she's been in more fights than our entire security force combined." "That's impossible. Her file lists her as a civilian academic with no military background." "Sir, have you ever considered that humans might have a very different definition of civilian academic than the rest of us?" Before WEX-7 could respond, alarms began sounding from conference room 7. Flux-12's security displays immediately shifted to show multiple biometric readings, indicating elevated stress levels, increased heart rates, and what appeared to be the initial stages of ritual combat preparation. "Sir," Flux-12 announced, "I think the cultural exchange has officially begun." Back in conference room 7, Iris Stone was listening with obvious fascination as Challenge Master Korth 9 explained Vorthak tradition. "Among our people," Korth 9 rumbled, "worthiness is determined through trials of strength, endurance, and combat skill. Those who cannot prove themselves in battle are considered unfit for serious negotiation." "That's a very practical approach," Iris replied thoughtfully. "It ensures that your negotiating partners understand the stakes involved." "Exactly. Therefore, before we can discuss territorial boundaries or trade agreements, you must demonstrate your fitness to represent your species." "What did you have in mind?" War Speaker Vorth 3 stepped forward, his natural armor plating gleaming under the conference room lights. "Single combat, against one of our number. Non-lethal, but fought to submission, or incapacitation. Interesting. And if I win, then you have earned the right to speak for humanity in these negotiations. And if I lose, then Earth must send a worthier representative. Iris considered this proposition while examining the 6 Vorthak warriors, each one representing centuries of military tradition and combat experience. To most species, the challenge would have been impossible. To most humans, it would have been suicide. To Iris Stone, it was exactly the kind of cultural immersion opportunity she had been hoping for. "Challenge Master Korth 9, she said formally. "I accept your terms. However, I have one request." "State it." "I'd like to understand the full scope of Vorthak combat traditions. Would it be possible to face all 6 of you in succession rather than just one?" The silence that followed this request was so complete that Flux-12 could hear his own breathing apparatus cycling through its filtration routine. "You wish to challenge all 6 of us?" Battlestage Vorth-12 asked, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "For comprehensive cultural understanding, yes. I believe that observing how different warriors approach combat will give me better insight into Vorthak military philosophy." "Human," War Speaker Vorth-3 said slowly. "You do realize that our warriors train from birth for combat? That we have natural armor and superior strength?" "Oh, absolutely. That's what makes this such a valuable learning opportunity. And you still wish to proceed?" "Well," Iris said, beginning to stretch in preparation for physical activity, "you can't really understand a warrior culture without experiencing their martial traditions firsthand. Besides, I've been looking forward to this ever since I read about Vorthak challenge protocols in graduate school." Challenge Master Korth 9 exchanged glances with his fellow warriors, each one recognizing that they were dealing with something unprecedented. In centuries of diplomatic contact, no species had ever volunteered to face multiple Vorthak champions in succession. "Very well," Korth 9 announced. "The challenges will proceed according to traditional format. No weapons, no assistance. Combat continues until submission or incapacitation." "Perfect," Iris replied, removing her jacket to reveal arms covered in an intricate pattern of scars that told the story of dozens of previous encounters. "Should we start with you, Challenge Master, or would you prefer to work up to it?" As the first formal challenge began, Flux-12 activated his emergency communication protocols and began documenting what was about to become either the most spectacular diplomatic disaster in galactic history or the most effective cultural exchange program ever conceived. He was beginning to suspect it might be both. The first challenge lasted exactly 93 seconds. Flux-12 watched through the security feeds as War Speaker Vorth-3, a veteran of countless campaigns and possessor of natural armor that could deflect energy weapons, found himself face down on the conference room floor, with Iris Stone's knee pressed against his neck and her arm wrapped around his throat in what appeared to be a perfect submission hold. "Fascinating," Iris said conversationally, maintaining her grip while Vorth-3 tapped the floor in surrender. "Your species' center of gravity is about 6 inches lower than I calculated from the anatomical studies. That's going to require some adjustments to my research methodology." "You studied our anatomy?" Vorth-3 gasped as Iris released him. "Oh yes, xenobiology was one of my favorite subjects. Did you know that Vorthak breathing apparatus has a vulnerability point right below the 3rd armor plate? I've been wondering if that was accurate." Challenge Master Korth 9 stared at the human, who was helping his defeated warrior to his feet, with obvious concern for his well-being. "How did you—" "Pattern recognition," Iris explained cheerfully. "Your species relies heavily on strength and natural armor, which means you probably haven't developed techniques for dealing with opponents who use leverage and joint manipulation. It's a common adaptation in warrior cultures that evolve from predator species." "You're analyzing our combat techniques while fighting us?" "Real-time data collection is the most accurate method for cultural research. Should we continue?" The second challenge lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds, primarily because Battlestage Vorth-12 was more cautious after witnessing his colleague's rapid defeat. It ended with him unconscious on the floor after Iris applied what she cheerfully described as a pressure point technique I learned from the Centaurian martial arts masters. "You've studied Centaurian combat methods?" Korth 9 asked, his voice carrying a note of growing concern. "Among others. The Centaurians have excellent theories about neurological disruption through precise pressure application." The Regalians are masters of energy redirection. The Cowreth taught me some wonderful techniques for dealing with opponents who outweigh you by several hundred pounds. How many species have you studied with? Well, let's see. Iris began counting on her fingers, while casually dodging a surprise attack from war leader Dorth-5, who had apparently decided that formal challenge protocols were less important than stopping this terrifying human before she collected any more cultural data. 47 different species across 12 star systems, though some of those were repeat visits for follow-up research. War leader Dorth-5 found himself upside down and unconscious before he finished processing this information. 47 species? Korth-9's voice had risen to something approaching panic. Give or take. It's hard to keep exact count when you're doing longitudinal studies across multiple populations. Challenge Master Korth-9 looked around the conference room, taking in his 3 defeated warriors and the cheerful human who was making notes on a datapad she had somehow produced from her jacket pocket. What are you writing? He asked. Observational data. For instance, war leader Dorth-5's attack patterns suggested he was trained in the traditional Vorthak overwhelming force school of combat. But he failed to account for the possibility that his opponent might use his own momentum against him. That's valuable information for understanding how your military training philosophy shapes individual tactical choices. You're studying us. I'm studying with you. There's a difference. True cultural understanding requires participation, not just observation. Guard Captain Torthate stepped forward, his posture indicating readiness for combat. Human, your methods are unprecedented. But surely you cannot defeat all of us. Probably not, Iris admitted. Statistical analysis suggests that fatigue and accumulated minor injuries will eventually compromise my effectiveness. But that's part of the research process. Understanding failure modes is just as important as documenting success parameters. You're treating this like an academic exercise. Everything is an academic exercise, if you approach it with the right mindset. Guard Captain Torthate lasted almost 4 minutes, primarily because he had learned from observing the previous defeats and adapted his strategy accordingly. Unfortunately for him, Iris had also been learning and adapting. The challenge ended with him yielding after discovering that human flexibility could compensate for a significant size and strength disadvantage. Remarkable, Iris observed, helping him to his feet. Your species' adaptation rate is much faster than the literature suggested. Guard Captain Torthate showed clear tactical evolution based on observation of previous encounters. That suggests a higher level of battlefield intelligence than most xenobiological studies indicate. You're complementing our intelligence while defeating us in combat? Why wouldn't I? Academic respect and physical competition aren't mutually exclusive. Some of my best research partnerships have developed from initial combat encounters. Flux-12, who had been joined in the monitoring room by several other fascinated technicians, activated his communication unit. Medical Bay, this is Flux-12. You're going to need trauma teams standing by, but not for the human. Say again? The human is fine. The Vorthak warriors, however, are getting a very comprehensive education in human cultural exchange methods. Back in the conference room, only 2 Vorthak remained standing. Honor Guard Morth-2 and Challenge Master Korth-9 exchanged grim looks before Honor Guard Morth-2 stepped forward. Human Iris Stone, he announced formally. You have proven your worthiness beyond question. There is no shame in yielding to superior skill. Oh, but we're just getting to the interesting part, Iris replied. I've been looking forward to observing traditional Vorthak Honor Guard techniques. The historical records suggest your training focuses on protecting high-value targets, which should result in very different tactical approaches compared to your assault-focused colleagues. Honor Guard Morth-2's challenge lasted 6 minutes and 37 seconds, not because he was more skilled than the others, but because he spent most of that time trying to understand how a human half his size could consistently anticipate and counter moves that had never failed him before. How? He asked, after finding himself immobilized by a technique that seemed to involve his own armor working against him. Pattern analysis combined with cross-cultural combat methodology, Iris explained, while ensuring he wasn't seriously injured. Your honor guard training emphasizes protection over aggression, which creates predictable defensive patterns. Once I identified your primary protective instincts, it was a matter of creating situations where those instincts worked against you. You turned our strengths into weaknesses. I redirected your strengths toward unintended consequences. It's a fundamental principle of conflict resolution. Work with existing forces rather than against them. Challenge Master Korth 9 stood alone, surrounded by his defeated warriors and faced with a human who was somehow more dangerous than entire armies while remaining technically unarmed. Cultural Coordinator Stone, he said slowly. I begin to understand why your species sends academics to handle diplomatic negotiations. Really? That's wonderful. Cross-cultural understanding is the primary goal of any successful exchange program, but I confess I am confused about something. Please, ask anything. Academic curiosity should always be encouraged. If you are truly a cultural coordinator, why are you so exceptionally skilled at combat? Iris paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Challenge Master, may I ask you something in return? Proceed. How do you think I learned so much about 47 different warrior cultures? The silence that followed this question was profound and deeply unsettling. You learn by fighting them? I learned by living with them, training with them, and earning their respect through participation in their traditions. Some cultures express friendship through shared meals, others through artistic collaboration. Warrior cultures express respect through shared combat, and you participated in the combat traditions of 47 different species? 48 now, counting the Vorthak, though I should note that some species required multiple visits for complete cultural immersion. Challenge Master Korth 9 realized he was facing something unprecedented in galactic history. A human who had systematically learned the combat techniques of nearly every warrior species in known space. Not for conquest or glory, but for academic research. Challenge Master, Iris continued. Would you prefer a formal challenge, or would you be interested in discussing the philosophical differences between Vorthak and human approaches to conflict resolution? Both, Korth 9 replied, accepting the inevitability of his situation. But perhaps we could discuss philosophy during the challenge? Excellent idea. Combat-based learning is always more effective when combined with theoretical analysis. Their challenge lasted 15 minutes. Not because Korth 9 was more skilled than his colleagues, but because both participants were having such an intellectually stimulating conversation about the cultural implications of their respective fighting styles that they occasionally forgot they were supposed to be trying to defeat each other. It ended with Korth 9's voluntary surrender after Iris demonstrated a technique that she explained was a synthesis of Rogelian energy redirection, Centaurian pressure point theory, and Calrith momentum manipulation, adapted for Vorthak anatomy and armor distribution. Remarkable, Korth 9 said, accepting Iris's assistance in standing. In 15 minutes of combat, you have taught me more about interspecies martial arts than I learned in decades of military service. That's the beauty of cultural exchange programs, Iris replied happily. Everyone learned something new. 3 hours later, Conference Room 7 had been transformed into an impromptu academic symposium. The 6 Vorthak warriors sat around the table with Iris, engaged in animated discussion about combat philosophy, cultural adaptation, and the role of martial arts in diplomatic relations. So you see, Iris was explaining, each species develops fighting techniques that reflect their fundamental values and social structures. Vorthak combat emphasizes honor and direct confrontation, which mirrors your society's focus on personal integrity and straightforward communication. And humans? Challenge Master Korth 9 asked. Humans emphasize adaptability and creative problem-solving, which reflects our tendency to view every challenge as a learning opportunity, even challenges that could result in serious injury or death, especially those. High-stakes situations provide the most valuable data about cultural stress responses and survival methodology. Flux-12, who had been monitoring the entire extraordinary afternoon, finally activated his communication unit to file his incident report. Security log, supplemental entry. Human Cultural Coordinator Iris Stone has successfully completed traditional Vorthak challenge protocols by defeating 6 veteran warriors in single combat. Current status. All parties are engaged in peaceful academic discussion about interspecies martial arts theory. He paused, then added, note for future reference. When humans list cultural exchange coordination as their profession, recommend immediate consultation with xenocultural specialists before granting conference access. Also, he continued, suggest updating security protocols to account for the possibility that some species may consider extensive combat experience to be a normal requirement for civilian academic positions. As the day shifted into evening, representatives from 12 different species had requested permission to observe the ongoing discussion in Conference Room 7. Word had spread throughout the diplomatic facility that a human academic was providing real-time analysis of warrior culture methodology while demonstrating practical applications of interspecies combat techniques. This is unprecedented, Senior Technician WEX-7 announced during the emergency staff meeting. We have delegates lining up to request private consultation sessions with the Human Cultural Coordinator. What kind of consultations? Flux-12 asked. The Rigelian trade delegation wants her to evaluate their security protocols. The Centaurian ambassadors are asking for comparative analysis of their martial arts traditions. And the Calreth representatives are requesting a formal cultural exchange program to send their warriors to Earth for advanced training. She's turned a diplomatic conference into a martial arts academy, Flux-12 observed. And somehow, Wexlo-7 replied, it's working. The preliminary negotiations have proceeded more smoothly than anyone expected. Apparently, having a human who can literally fight representatives from any species has established a level of mutual respect that's facilitating unprecedented cooperation. So the humans knew exactly what they were doing when they sent her? I'm beginning to think, Wex-7 said slowly, that humans approach diplomacy the same way they approach everything else, by turning impossible situations into learning opportunities. Back in Conference Room 7, Iris Stone was demonstrating a technique she had learned from the silicon-based warriors of Alpha Centauri while explaining its application to carbon-based physiology. Around her, delegates from 6 different species took notes and asked questions, with the enthusiasm of students attending their first advanced seminar. The beautiful thing about cultural exchange, she told her fascinated audience, is that everyone brings something unique to the learning process. Combat techniques, philosophical approaches, problem-solving methodologies. It all contributes to a better understanding of what makes each species special. And the scars? Challenged Master Korth 9 asked, gesturing to the intricate pattern of marks that covered her exposed arms. Research notes, Iris replied with a smile. Each one represents a lesson learned, a technique mastered, or a friendship forged through shared combat. They're my credentials, my bibliography, and my continuing education all rolled into one. So when the conference protocols stated no weapons allowed, I didn't bring any weapons, Iris confirmed. I brought my education. It just happens that my education is written in scars and measured in victories earned through cultural understanding. As the evening progressed and the impromptu martial arts symposium continued, Flux-12 filed his final report of the day. Cultural exchange program proceeding beyond all expectations. Recommend immediate expansion of human academic consultation services to all future diplomatic conferences. He paused, then added a personal note. Also recommend hazard pay increase for security personnel assigned to monitor human cultural coordinators. Some forms of education are more dangerous than others. The Neutral Zone Diplomatic Summit would go down in history as the most successful interspecies negotiation ever conducted, primarily because all parties involved had gained a new appreciation for the human approach to problem solving. If you want to understand someone, learn to fight like them, then teach them to fight like you. By the end of the conference, Iris Stone had collected enough data for 17 different research papers, established exchange programs with 12 species, and accidentally founded what would become the Galactic Institute for Combat-Based Cultural Studies. But most importantly, she had proven that sometimes the best weapon you can bring to a diplomatic negotiation is a comprehensive education and the scars to prove you earned it.